in my own.
Welcome to Labor's View. This show is brought to you by the very hardworking and dedicated employees, non-supervisory employees of the Essex County Division of Welfare. They are the members of CWA Local 1081. That's a union, Communications Workers of America, Local 1081. I'm David Weiner, and I am both president of the local and host of this show, Labor's View. Tonight is one of those days I'm going to go solo. We're going to discuss issues that affect our members directly, but as I always say, they also affect not only the clients we serve, who are welfare recipients, and others as well, not just welfare recipients. We serve senior citizens, we serve boarding home residents. People don't realize what AIDS patients, we serve a lot of people. In fact, one out of every 5 residents of Essex County is a client of the Essex County Division of Welfare. 1 out of every 5 people in Essex. And that's not just Newark and East Orange and the typically thought of urban areas. That includes all the way up to Roseland and whatever the furthest reach of Essex is going west. Every town we have people that are clients. So we're going to talk about first Medicaid, the issue of Medicaid. Medicaid is a program that provides people that have incomes. Before, it used to be if you had an income less than 133% of the poverty level, whatever the rate is set for poverty income, that is determined to be poverty income. And now with Obamacare, which is the ACA, they changed it so now it's 138%. So a couple of things have happened that have impacted our members, and particularly the one major site that our members are in now. It's 10 Park Place, Newark, which is just parallel to Broad Street, kind of, and it is across from the YMCA. For anybody who knows Newark, that's where it is, across from the Y, and by Military Park. And they increased the poverty level under Obamacare to 138%. So 2 things happened. One, you had the 2008 financial meltdown, just as Bush was leaving office, George W. Bush was leaving office, which, of course, President Obama inherited and did, in our opinion, very well in handling it, despite what others may say. You have the auto industry, American auto industry was saved. You had most of the banks, which I have ambivalent feelings on that, but most of the major banks, except for, and brokerage houses like Lehman Brothers was not, but most the other ones basically were. And they're back to making billions of dollars in bonuses and stuff. And I won't get into that outtake. But so Medicaid provides medical coverage for poor people. So if you go in and apply for TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which used to be AFDC, which is basically if you have a mother or a father or sometimes a family with children, they're TANF covered. They get welfare grants, which are very low, by the way. I want to dispel the myth, one of the myths about welfare, that people are living in the lap of luxury. They haven't changed the rates since 1987, I think, and which is almost 30 years ago. And consider how much inflation has gone up in the last almost 30 years. And a mother with 1 child, I believe, still gets $322 a month in grant. Then you're entitled to food stamps, as long as you don't have outside income, and you're entitled to Medicaid, and that's what we're talking about, Medicaid. Well, not just Medicaid, because food stamps went up too exponentially. The food stamp caseload went up first exponentially because of the crash, the crash of the financial system in 2008. So what we've been experiencing in the Division of Welfare, and it's not just we, it's all the divisions of welfare, county welfare agencies across the entire state, because our union, not my local, but our union, CWA, different locals represent 15 of the 21 county welfare agencies throughout the state of New Jersey. In fact, we have a welfare council, and we meet to discuss our common problems, which I've discussed in the past. So you have this huge increase in food stamps. Then you have an increase, it went up about 70 or 80% from what the original amount was of food stamp clients. And the same amount, basically, or more, has gone up in Medicaid with the introduction not only of the crash, that increased the Medicaid, because people lost their jobs, they had no medical coverage, but also, and the private sector and the public sector, but private sector primarily began cutting back on providing health benefits to people, just like they've cut back on providing pensions to people. It used to be 80–90% of the private sector, particularly the bigger corporations, they provided medical and health benefits and all that kind of stuff, and most of them have cut it out. And in pensions, they've gone to 401ks if they do anything. A 401k means you put money in, your employer puts money in, or maybe you just put money in, it depends on the setup. So anyway, with the caseload in Medicaid has gone up at least 80, maybe 100% since Obamacare, before and since Obamacare came in. And we're glad to have Obamacare exacerbate the situation to the extent that it gives more access to more people who didn't have, because there were some 40, before his plan went through, there were some 40 million uninsured Americans, at least 40-something million uninsured Americans in health benefits. So what does that mean? That means that instead of having coverage, they have to go to, they let illnesses fester, and then they end up in the emergency room, and then you and I end up paying for it because it's called charity care. So we have this huge increase. Now, who is servicing these clients? Well, we are, our members are, the people that are assigned to the Medicaid office. And the problem is that the staffing in the Division of Welfare, of the entire agency, that would be workers, clerks, supervisors, their administrative supervisors, the heads of offices, personnel, everything. Staffing has not changed since the year 2000. It's nearly 15 years now. So we're working on the same staffing levels that we had in 2000, which were deficient in 2000. And now they're expected to service this huge increase in clients for food stamps and Medicaid, and it's not working. So what happens? Well, in that building I'm talking about, and I'm pointing because I'm probably pointing in the wrong direction. This is a new office, by the way. We moved from we're on the same floor in the building we were, 60 Park Place in Newark, right down the street from 10 Park Place, our building, where our members are, but we moved into this new, in fact, this is my second time seeing it. And it's smaller and we save money, but anyway. So our members have to serve all these clients, and every single day, this massive humanity, particularly in the beginning of the month, at certain times, particularly at holidays times, this massive humanity is coming into, and ironically, the Medicaid office, which is on the 10th floor of 10 Park Place, has the smallest waiting room of any of the offices in that. There are many other offices. The first and second floors are intake, where people do the application. Third floor is a TANF-related office. So was the 7th, but now they're combining the 7th with the 3rd. And all those cases from the 7th floor, thousands of cases are going on to the 3rd floor, and those workers have to absorb them. Some workers are going with them. And then they're taking the Medicaid cases and they're putting them on the 7th floor because so many people are waiting on the 10th floor in the Medicaid office that they go beyond the waiting room into the hallway. And as I said in an interview on WNYC, it was aired last month, radio, public radio, the clients were clogging, and still do, clog not their fault, but they're waiting, they're clogging the hallway that leads from the elevators that lead to the waiting room, so that when you get off the elevator, you got to work through a crowd just to get into the crowded office, to get into the sanctuary, if you will, which is where our workers interview the clients and do their work past the reception area. And we also have clients still, after all these years, having to wait at times online outside the building on Rector Street in Newark, from the Rector Street all the way up to Park Place and beyond. Sometimes that wraps around in front of the 10 Park Place. Well, what does this mean? Well, it means that you have men, women, and children. I have a picture of a guy that's in a wheelchair. In fact, if you look at yesterday's Star Ledger, and yesterday would be December 9th, there was an article about that Newark is the #1, if I got it right, the #1 in the number of people on welfare in the entire state of New Jersey, and I think it's the 6th largest number of people in the nation the city of Newark, which has so many tangential areas I can go. But you have these people waiting in every type of element, heat, cold, rain and cold. And then they get into the building and they have to wait again. And if they don't have the right paperwork, they may not get seen that day. And if they don't have an appointment, they won't get seen that day, because we take appointments first, which is only fair, and then we call walk-ins. They come in. So what happens? Well, first of all, there's another nightmare. That nightmare is that it's like the perfect storm. If you remember that movie with, I forgot who was in it, but some George Clooney, thank you. And the ships on the waves, and it sinks, all that kind of, I don't want to ruin it for you, didn't see it, but I just did. But it's like that because all these negative, horrific things came together at one time. The influence of the crash of 2008 combined with the increase of eligibility first, and the increase of eligibility of Medicaid, because Obamacare is not just Medicaid. Obamacare also is, in New Jersey, exchanges run by nonprofits for people who that earn more than 138% of the poverty level. So this perfect storm is that you have the crash of 2008 and you have Obamacare causing the food stamp and the Medicaid caseload to skyrocket. The TANF caseload, regular welfare, is flat as a board or gone down because of the 1996 welfare reform law sponsored by President Clinton and approved by the Congress. So that they have a time limit. They have 5 years and they got to get off. So those clients are not long-term clients. Where they go is another story for another day, and we'll do it. So you have these people, and the perfect storm is those two things, plus you have flat staffing. It doesn't increase over the years as the caseload is increasing, and you have physical limitations of the building. You can't stretch this building that we're in, which we occupy now all 10 floors. Because, first of all, it's a building, and it's brick and mortar, and it was built in 1929, just before the crash, ironically, before that big crash, the big one of 1929. So we have no place, so we shuffle people around. We take the people from the 10th floor, we move them to the 4th floor, where there's a smaller food stamp office than the one that exists at 50 South Clinton Street in East Orange. And we also have a child support at the Hall of Records on the 1st floor. But the majority of our members are in 10 Park Place in Newark. So you have people and this perfect storm coming together combined with something called case banking. And I think it's one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard, and I've researched it where it's taken place in other places, such as the poster child that everyone points to as being the best of all is, ironically, Washington, D.C. They apparently have a very well-working, well-oiled system. And what it means is that case banking means the old system, which we're just changing from, and we're the last county in the state to go to case banking because we're the largest. Essex County has 30+% of all the welfare clients in the state of New Jersey, which is another issue, because whenever we have issues where, for example, food stamps, the federal money pays for food stamps, that's under the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. We are so behind in getting people signed up and getting their case processed according to the law, which is 30 days. If it's not an emergency, you got to either okay it or not, or just cut them off and say you're not getting it. Or if it's an emergency, you got to get it done in 7 days. Well, we're so behind that the feds fined the state or us $300,000, but they pulled that back, $300,000. Now they're saying to the state, you've got to get your food stamp completion timeliness rate up to, I think, either 80 or 90%. It might be 90. The problem is that Essex everybody's having problems throughout the state, all the county welfare agencies, like I said earlier, but Essex is dragging down everyone else because we're a third of the state, and if we're falling behind, we're going to drag down the entire numbers, which leaves the state open to get sanctioned by the feds, which will only exacerbate, because if the state decides to take that out on the hides of the welfare agencies, then you have what? They're going to do layoffs? Or you're going to allow it to attrition, lose staff to attrition, which means you don't hire when people go. And then all that does is exacerbate the situation, because now it's going to take you longer to get the stuff done. So you have all these things coming together, and this case banking. Instead of the old way was, the old means like a couple months ago, you go into an office and you, let's say West Side office, that's a TANF food stamp combined office. You go into the office and you already went through the intake process, so you're assigned to the West Side office based on geography, where you live. So there's a unit, hopefully, of 6 people, that's what it's supposed to be, and a supervisor and a clerk. Normally it's not. And any given day, the percentage of people in the entire agency out for any reason, whether it be sick, vacation, whatever, leave of absence, personal day, it's about 20%. So a fifth of your people are not in anyway. So, and they don't always fill the units when people leave because we don't have people go. The training is 10 weeks and you got to take them off a civil service list. You can hire them provisionally first, but then they eventually have to take a civil service test. And the ones that don't pass, you have to replace them again and train those new people for 10 weeks. Not that civil service is bad, it's not. It's excellent because it stops the administrations, whether it be Essex County administration or the city of Newark or any place else, it stops the political nonsense that goes on. It still goes on in other respects, and they still try to push that nonsense onto us, which is, again, a story for another day, in terms of hiring practices. But we fight back. That's what the union's for, to be diligent and look after our members and to look after our clients, because those are our customers. Without them, we don't have jobs. We're not here because Joe D., the county executive, Joe D. Vincenzo, and the Freeholder Board, the form of government, legislative and executive legislative, it's not because they want to give us jobs. It's because they have a service to provide by law, federal and state law, and we are the employees to provide that service. And we know that, and we're appreciative of that. We don't take it for granted. It's very cold out there, literally and figuratively, in terms of the job market. So what happens? Well, you have all these crowds of people, and they get stressed out. Because of all the treatment, standing outside and the elements, and then finally get in the building, and then you got to sit in a waiting room, and then you're shunted down to the 4th or 5th or 6th floors because there's too many people on the Medicaid. Maybe you don't get seen that day. You got to come back another day, and it's a really sad part is you have mothers with infants, and they'll come in to the Medicaid office, and they have to leave their carriages because there's no room in the waiting area for the carriages. They have to leave the carriages out by those elevators I talked about, where the people line up, you know, deep all the way and block the elevators. Well, it looks like a parking lot. It literally looks like with cars on the little baby carriages, scores of them in that area, and it's not a very big area. So the clients get, understandably, uncomfortable physically, mentally, sitting there bored to tears for hours. Even if they have a cell phone, there's only so much you can do, or how long your battery will last. And the mothers with the infants, they have to leave the carriages in the hallway, so they're holding one or more infants in their arms for hours on end until they're seen, and they may not even be seen, or if they are seen, they may not have what they need for the case to be done. They may have to come back another day or another day or another day. And this, again, is not just Essex County. It's throughout the entire state. We just happen to be the biggest and the worst because we're one of the worst staffed. Proportionally, we are probably the worst staff proportionally to the number of clients we have. The other agencies are bad too, but nothing as bad as we are. So the clients are out of sort. And so they start fighting amongst themselves. In fact, I happened to be on the 10th floor one day, and I went into the reception booth and watched out at the crowd to see what was going on, how the thing was working and stuff. And it was horrible that day. And when I left the booth and I was going to leave to go out through the client waiting room into the elevator section, a fight broke out. This tall woman, she was African American. It's only important to the story because of race and ethnicity factor into these things sometimes, unfortunately. And she wasn't even a client, it turns out. She was hanging out with her friend who was there to get serviced. And she got her nose out of joint with one of the clients the Hispanic client in the waiting area, who was in the back with little children. And I don't know what the issue was, I didn't see it start. So I had my iPad with me, and like an idiot, I put it up and put it on video, and I got a little video of it. We're not gonna play it here, but it got the client and guards surrounding the client. We have a private security company assigned to the building. And she's threatening the guard. She's threatening a guard from the facility because the guard's Hispanic, and she was protecting the Hispanic client from this client. It just gets messy. So you've got that interaction. Then you get, when the clients finally do get seen, besides the receptionists who are behind a glass window, but they take a lot of verbal abuse, and not from all clients, they're not even the majority of the clients, but it doesn't take many to have a problem. Then the clients get into the inner sanctum, which is where they get interviewed by the workers, right? Well, now they're really teed off because they finally, maybe it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, they get into there and they can show them documents and hopefully they knew what they had to have before they got there. Otherwise, they got to come back another day because the worker can't work up the case without the requisite documentation. Birth certificates, social security cards, income things, statements, all kinds of rent statements, all kinds of stuff. So who's the first person the client takes out their anxiety and aggression upon and frustration? It's the worker. They're the ones that were sitting in front of you, and they didn't do it. They're not the county executive who determines how many people are hired. They're not the state of New Jersey Department of Human Services and the direct Commissioner Velez, who's supposed to oversee how the Division of Welfare hires people. I've done shows about this before, about this annual agreement that the county and the state have, but we won't get into that now. So then you have these confrontations where the guards have to come in. So some that we've had assaults of clients. Now, thankfully, our union, and I got to say because I've been president of local for 34 years, and we were just reelected without opposition for some reason. Nobody wants the job probably, but no, they do, but they just don't want to do the work. I've seen clients attack workers, and then we have one sheriff's officer assigned to 10 floors. One sheriff's officer. The rest are unarmed, private security guards that are $8, $9 an hour, if that. No benefits. I don't even think if they take a day off, they even get paid for it. So you can see how high their morale is going to be. And they're legally not allowed to touch somebody unless they're physically attacked, although a lot of them do get involved and will physically get involved and help somebody. We've had a guy, a big guy, one of our guys punched in the face and spit on by a client. We had one client, one of our members a couple of years ago, she had cornrows, and the client, inexplicably, she didn't even express any consternation before that, just went up, grabbed her hair and yanked out a whole piece of hair out of her head. So it was bald, okay? And we had a client the other day threaten a female worker, and then luckily we couldn't get the guards fast enough, so two of our male members just grabbed the client, got him to the ground, and held him until the police came. And then the really sad thing is, this agency has a policy that you would think that if a client physically assaults or is really disruptive to the point of possible violence or violence, you would think that they should be, the cops come, they do, they should be arrested, and that they should be taken out in cuffs for physical assault. It doesn't usually happen that way at all. They're just let go. And even worse, they're serviced that day because the policy is service them. So they take them to the side in front of people that have been waiting all day, and they're serviced and sent on their merry way. Well, this guy that was violent, I think it was a little test. I think it was a little something wrong with him. But he went out and hung out in front of the building for 2 or 3 hours. And my shop stewards called me, officers called me, and we had to make sure that the person with whom he had the interaction had an escort to get to her car. Again, this is not a big percentage of welfare clients. They're not all violent people. They're not all these stereotypes that people come up with. But it does happen. Then you have another level. Then you have the stress level that is so great amongst the employees from all having to get all this work done. They're behind. I've told this audience, but you may have not watched before, we had in the Medicaid office, it was discovered that there were over 90,000 overdue, I'll repeat, 90,000 overdue, what they call Medicaid redeterminations. That means once somebody's on Medicaid, I think at least once a year, it used to be twice, I think once a year, the worker has to have them come in and to do a reevaluation of their circumstances, to see if anything changed. Did you have a child? Did a child leave the household? Is a paramour there? Are you working? Are you not working? All these kind of things. So you check up on, so it helps keep down fraud. And we had backed up so much taking the applications and trying to process the applications that to review the people that were on and their circumstances was shunted to the side, so you had 90,000 overdues. We still have, that was over a year ago, we still have at least, I think, 30,000 or more overdue redeterminations. Now, add to that another office, the intake office. It was just discovered a few months ago that the intake office, where they take the applications, or if they don't take the application there, they send them to the Medicaid office, because intake is, they send them to where they got to go. So if it's a Medicaid, they go to the 10th floor. If it's a TANF and it's certain geography, you go to the 3rd floor. If it's TANF in another geography, you used to go to the 7th floor, but now that's, I just told you, that's been combined with the 3rd floor. So what happens is the workers start fighting amongst themselves because of the stress. Because you can't, I was saying, I lost myself there. The intake office, it was discovered, had some 10,000 overdue cases, 10,000. So what did they do? The administration had to give, and they're still doing, overtime to clean up the 90,000. They forgot about them. They're doing first, what case did they do first? Food stamps. Why? Because the USDA, as I said earlier, is threatening to come in and fine the state, which will fine the county, if they don't get the completion rate of food stamp applications up to a certain percentage, either 80 or 90%, and the whole state has to get up there. And if we're dragging them down, we're going to get punished, the state will get punished. So the stress amongst the employees is incredible, and they start fighting amongst themselves. And it's almost like cannibalism. It's so sad to see. So when people think of social services, in this county, I've said it many times before, our county executive, whom I like greatly as a personal thing, but I think his politics are horrible. He endorsed Governor Christie. He's a Democrat. He endorsed Christie. We'll go there, and we've been there another day. But this county executive pays attention to the, God bless you, Joe D., but you pay attention to the zoo, where millions and hundreds of millions of dollars have probably been spent so far, and more to come. The golf courses and the parks. That's where the attention is. Look at any freeholder board agenda. They're online. Go Essex County Freeholders, look at the agenda. I guarantee you, the vast majority of the resolutions have to do with the parks, the golf courses, or the zoo. Very few have to do with social services or the jail correctional facility or the mental facility up in West Caldwell. Very few. It's all for the parks, the golf courses, and the zoo. So we in social services have been totally ignored, and it's all going to come crashing down. And in addition to that, we're losing our one division director, who has not had any deputy director assigned to her since she took over almost a year ago. She's retiring in February. She can't take it anymore. And we have other people going out, managers are saying, we've had enough. Between the increase in our health benefits and our pensions that was passed in 2011 legislatively, which made you go from $800 a year for your health benefits to $7,000 a year for your health benefits out of your salary, we've had enough. With a 2% salary cap per year, if you get that, they've had enough. So when you think of what's going on, watch the news, because there'll be more articles about our agency. There'll be more articles about social services and the problem. So on that light and happy note, we'll say thank you for joining us on Labor's View.